ITA for shouting at my ex in front of my daughters. I, a 37-year-old man, have 3 daughters, ages 8, 10, and 12. When our youngest was around 4 years old, their mother abandoned us for another guy. My ex, on the other hand, remains in touch and pays child support. I saw red stains on my oldest underpants a few weeks ago while washing laundry. When I questioned whether she was aware of it, she sobbed and said she attempted to contact her mother, but my ex didn't return her call. She'd been cramming toilet paper into her underpants in the hopes that it might help. I explained to her that menstruation is nothing to be embarrassed of, and I discovered some fantastic resources online for us to go through together. I went her to the shop to choose the brands of feminine products she preferred. She chose Playtex Sport since she is a gymnast. After we were through, I decided to do the same with my other 2. My 12-year-old offered to help with the preparations, and we made a night of it. It was lovely, and I learned a lot. I also learned about menstruation cups and how they help the environment. My ex phoned me back the other day. I'll generally set up a video chat and leave the room so they can have some alone time, and then I'll come back in to speak about boring co-parenting topics like school, bills, and so on. My ex was enraged with me the previous time we spoke about periods with the girls. She yelled at me that I was sick, and why did I contact her myself if I knew it was so urgent? I could have phoned one of their grandmas/aunts, but my mother has dementia, and her mother and sisters call me a failure since I teach kindergarten, so I don't like them. My ex told me I was being immature and that I should have simply toughed it out for the sake of the girls. This really irritated me, so I yelled back that maybe if she wasn't such a slacker and answered her phone once in a while, she could have handled it. I brought up everything she does that bothers them. She hasn't been to a single soccer game, piano recital, or gymnastics meet in 2 years, and every other weekend when they get home from her house, they go straight to their rooms, only to emerge hours later asking me why she loves her new husband more than them, and what they did to make her leave. My ex replied by stating I should tell them it's not their fault I couldn't please her, to which I yelled, to which she just laughed and pointed behind me, adding, "Look what you done." When I turned back, my 8-year-old and 10-year-old were bawling at the doorway. It crushed my heart since I never yelled, so I knew I terrified them. My 12-year-old walked in and began yelling at her mother, and although I appreciate her standing up for me, this is not a war I want her to wage. My ex hung up before I could properly de-escalate the situation. So let's just say the girls have had free reign of the ice cream and infinite hours of video games because I'm so sorry. Don't tell me I don't love them because I saw all of the Twilight movies with them. But in this case, AITA for yelling. Story 2. AITA for insisting that my wife acknowledge her driving mistake. My wife and I were on our way to an appointment the other day, and she was driving. As she came to a halt, about to turn left down the street, I glanced down to check something on my phone. I glanced up as she started to turn and saw she was going to T-bone another motorist approaching from our right. "Watch out," I yelled in response. She pushed on her brakes to prevent the accident, which would have been minor at most. "What was that?" I inquired. "You must pay attention." "Sorry," she said dismissively. "If he hadn't been moving so slowly, it wouldn't have occurred." That concerned me a lot. My thinking process was that blaming others for her honest mistake implies she won't learn from it and will make a more harmful error in the future. We ended up talking about it for a few minutes until she reluctantly confessed that she should have looked. But she swiftly added that it was still his fault that he was driving so slowly. Normally, I'm okay with compromise, but in this situation, I didn't think it was enough. "No," I answered emphatically. "Other drivers will not behave as you anticipate. It is your responsibility to respond to how they are driving." She seemed to be irritated by how forceful I became, but she admitted her error and the fight was over. We made up afterwards, but it still bothers me. I feel like I'm in the wrong since my firmness ended up taking on almost a paternal tone, which isn't generally suitable while conversing with your husband. I also believe I am justified since those who refuse to own their faults repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I don't want her driving carelessly, as if everyone else is going to be totally predictable. That's a nice way to go out. What are your thoughts? Edit. As requested, information has been included. This is a habit with her. She loves to be on her phone, incessantly tailgates folks driving 5 under, doesn't pay attention to what's going on around her, and always puts it on someone else. Adapted from my response below. Edit 2. Many commentators believe this is my normal setting. I'd want to point out that this tone is highly odd for me, and is not typical of how I generally talk to my wife during a disagreement. That's why I'm still troubled by it 2 days later and telling strangers about it on the internet. I'd want to emphasize that this is not my usual pattern of conduct. Compromise and escalation are my watchwords. That's not to say I'm great at it, but that's my objective. I selected a hill to die on because I believe the stakes were really high here. Story 3. AITA for saying my 28 male, more ornery oldest sister 42 female was a lot happier than my pacifist middle sister 36 female. My father had an affair and abandoned my mother in favor of someone half his age, a story as ancient as time. We have 2 half-siblings as a result of this connection. It is because of my eldest sister, Amy, who has cut my father out of her life that she was unable to attend my sister's wedding and other family gatherings that my father would attend. My middle sister, Jane, was really disappointed that Amy had declined to go, but she maintains that Amy must be unhappy since she has missed so many family gatherings on my father's side of the family. Amy, on the other hand, is completely content. I see her once a week, and despite the fact that she is unmarried, she seems to be rather well established in terms of her profession, home, friends, interests, and her mother's side of the family. We don't really speak about our family problems. We simply hang out together. Jane, on the other hand, is always bringing up family problems from our father's side of the family. When it comes to our half-siblings, it's almost as if she's been sucked into the poison of the situation, since she insists on maintaining a connection with them. I only see them at large occasions because I don't stay in touch with my father. My father has never forgiven Amy for cutting him out of the picture, and he can't stop talking about her to Jane, which is another reason why I don't come to visit very often. Jane also continues to stress that the only way for Amy to heal is for her to forgive and reconcile, that the hatred she's harboring is poison, and that she's avoiding the issue by doing so. Amy, on the other hand, seems to be in wonderful health. Personally, I believe Jane attempted to go the adult road and is now remorseful for doing so since it requires her to put up with my father's poisonous conduct. Our half-siblings are now 15 and 12 years old, and they are always inquiring about Amy, which is generating friction solely because they are perplexed as to why she would not talk to them. Amy had reached the stage where she was either too terrible or upset by Jane's needling, which gave the impression that Amy was more disturbed than she really was. However, when I spend one-on-one time with her, none of this comes up at all. Jane came back to hang out with Amy and I again yesterday, but this time the conversation was about how Amy was torturing our half-siblings and how she needed to let go and move on if she wanted to be happy. I was getting a little angry up with Jane at that point, since she was really attempting to portray Amy as some kind of monster for refusing to see our half-brothers. Yes, they are interested in Amy, but they aren't really excited about the prospect of meeting her since they are unfamiliar with her. Jane is exaggerating the severity of the situation. I urged Jane to stop with her pseudopsychology and that she just wanted Amy to act as a barrier between her and our father's family because she was tired of dealing with them. She agreed. I also said that Amy was far happier than Jane after shutting our father out of our lives, and that I was likewise happy with less contact, while Jane was just disappointed that doing the right thing had not made her life any easier. Jane accused me of being mean and pushing for my half-siblings to face the weight of my father's misdeeds, both of which she found offensive. I responded by saying that our father was never going to forsake us in favor of his other children, and that kissing ass to him was a waste of time. Jane went after that, but I'm now feeling a little under the weather.